GameMarx.
Welcome to GameMarx, the podcast for Xbox Live indie games and development. GameMarx, where gamers control the means of production.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of GameMarx. This is going to be pretty much a single topic GameMarx. I'm not going to go through a lot of news. There's been some bigger stuff I'm hoping we discuss quite a bit. And it fills a bunch of podcasts. If not, it'll be a light podcast. First order of business though is some housekeeping. You are out next week.
Yes.
Okay. I think I've said that for the last 3 weeks in a row, but this week I'm right. You know? So next week, we are not going to have a traditional podcast, but there may be something that goes up as a podcast in its place. I'm going to, try to set up so that we can do, live streaming gameplay commentary. It's one of the things we used to do at GameMarx with the trials. And it's something, if you've been on the GameMarx YouTube page, you've seen we're heading back into doing the kind of gameplay commentary with it. And one of the things that I would like to bring into what we do is some live play game, it's Twitch. We're on Twitch. It's kind of the thing. We've upgraded the network at the house, and gotten a lot more upstream bandwidth, business class, with that, so hopefully we can get some pretty high quality game streams on there. So I kind of got an idea of the game and everything that we'll set up for this test run. But while you're out, Cicely and I, that's what we'll attempt to do, and just kind of beta test that. And then I say there may or may not be something like a podcast, because on the nights that we do that, I'd like to. So you can have a podcast that is a video podcast in iTunes.
Yes.
And I just need to figure out how do we, say, oh, this week is a video, and it's the live gameplay night. So a bit of housekeeping, that's what we're going to do, next week. I was going to, looking at lining up guests and things like that, but, I'm going to go for this option, instead. And I don't really think, that we could do it earlier. Mostly because of the renovation that we got going on in our house, which should stabilize this week. I mean, the bulk is done, so things should start to return to normal, or the new normal, when we get there.
The new status quo.
Yeah. So, okay. Any other housekeeping to go through? We've been doing our Link to the Past playthrough. Right now on the GameMarx YouTube channel, is, the Link to the Past playthrough, and also, the girls are going through Atari games right now, is what's up there. And then, a little bit later too, I got a girls playing Super Mario Bros. 3 to upload, and post as well. Either stay in touch right now through the Twitter account, or, just directly on the YouTube account. The website is getting moved into WordPress, and I know I've talked about that, but I've been making a lot of progress on that front, and so that should be up fairly soon, and get that moved over. And once we get the new site in the WordPress, these video posts will appear in the RSS feed. So if you subscribe to us via the RSS feeds, then you should be able to get those that way again as well. So I think we're missing a lot of views on there because our RSS stream is quiet. And I noticed from when I posted a news item, when I wrote up a little news blurb on our video post, those tended to get more views than if I didn't. But I'm trying to get to a point where it's all automated, right? I don't want to have to, I want to just go into YouTube and get it uploaded once and get the content set and then let it disseminate across all the things. And get our Facebook page ingesting these as well. Which now we are facebook.com/GameMarx.
Because we actually got the 25 or whatever we needed for that?
No.
No?
Because they dropped that requirement.
Oh, did not realize that.
So Facebook basically said now that pages are users. And so I can use Facebook from my account as Michael Neal, or as Funkworks, or as GameMarx. And then they each have kind of like their own little pages. Now, the pages don't have all the options that a full user has. Like, I install the apps to my account, and then the apps have to be page aware from that point to just, no, I only want this app on, like this YouTube embed page. I only want that active on the GameMarx page. I don't want that active on my page. And what also sucks in the reverse is because YouTube can post to Facebook automatically, but not to a page. They don't seem to have anything that sends it to a page. So, I've talked to some people where they have it go to YouTube posts their main timeline, and then they have an app that copies from their main timeline to their page timeline. But that's just going to double post and piss people off. So.
Hey, you could create like a placeholder user or something, which
then I got to like
iffy,
transfer. Then I got to transfer the GameMarx account. I might be able to get multiple admins in the GameMarx page now. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, you should be able to add multiple users as a Facebook page admin.
So that might complicate things. Why that doesn't work as well. So we're getting that squared away. I just at some point I'll get the Facebook or the Funkworks website rocking and going. Other housekeeping at the top. Code stock. We've talked a lot about code stock in the past, so if you're hearing us, you probably already know what code stock is, but if not, Knoxford Developers Conference in July this year. July 12th to the 13th, I think.
Sounds correct.
Yeah, I don't think it's June. But go to codestock.org. I have stepped down as the organizer, so I am submitting as a speaker this year. I mean, I'm still involved, but at a much, much, much greater reduced capacity, because I stepped up more of my TechCo and nonprofit work there than my code stock and nonprofit work there. But it is going wonderful, and they just announced a keynote, which is going to be Julie Lerman. She is amazing, it'll be a wonderful keynote. I've known Julie for several years now, mostly through online and mailing lists that we're on. And discussion lists, and being a former MVP and ASP insider, but I have met her a few times as well. She's a wonderful, great personality, but knows her shit. I mean, like, she's one of them that when they post in the thread of like, okay, that's the answer, and if somebody's stupid enough to argue with it, like, like, no.
They deserve the beatdown that they will receive.
She knows the .NET data stack deeply. I don't believe the keynote's going to be on the .NET data stack. That would make sense for the keynote. But again, I'm not the organizer, but we are involved in the periphery. I think, Cicely, you should probably just send them an email about the shirt and get that going. Because if not, they're just going to come to you with no notice for a shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very clear when I stepped down that you have to do the shirt the next year.
I know.
And there's been no objection. And they're kind of, working to keep their heads above water with everything else. And if you wait for them to come to you, you're probably not going to have the time.
I did confirm with the leader what the new church topic was.
You know what? I think I did talk with him too. I may even step in a little bit and make one of my famous Photoshop documents of what the shirt's supposed to look like from cutting sources together. And send that for a point of discussion, or you could send with that from a point of discussion, because I talked briefly with them, and of course that's a very complex design.
And it'll get edited down as with...
I don't think there's only feature creep in the t-shirt design. I don't know.
Have you noticed how much they have feature creeps?
Well, I was going to say...
year?
Like, the Star Wars shirt was going to be like the whole poster, and it went down to Yoda.
Yeah.
That would have been insane.
But Yoda himself was still
insane.
Very detailed. But we went from Yoda to the Justice League.
Yeah.
One character to
that is
five
feature
characters.
Creep. But at some point, reality and feature creep, conflict, and reality always wins.
Speaking of artists and drawing, this goes to both of you, by the way, because either one of you could kind of jump in and do this. For the game series that we're posting on YouTube, I would like to have custom drawn title cards.
Like for Wasted Youth and Daddy Made Us Play?
Well, per game. Even.
Oh.
And, like, they are okay to be crude. Like, if you go look at Two Best Friends, some of those are really, really crude. This is not an insult, Dylan. They are in your style. Okay? So when I'm saying crude, I'm saying a basic, like, you're not in there shading, you're not in there adding a lot of, you know, you've got, like, more capability artistically
so
than I have.
Less than that, right?
Yeah, but if that is good, like if you want to do that level on some of these, and since we're getting to the point where we're going to have kind of a queue when I record, it's almost like, hey guys, I need the girls, Daddy Made Us Play Super Mario Brothers, right? And it's like, I need it in 2 or 3 weeks, you know, and it's just a 720 still, and then 720p, and then I'll overlay the stuff on it. So as we go along, if we don't have that, you know, I've been using the game screens, but I think that's a place we want to go to because all the major ones, that is kind of what they have. And you just basically, like, you know, in a Daddy Made Us Play or something like that, you put the heads of the girls on Mario and Luigi, you know, in the Super Mario Brothers, and just like a hand-drawn, crude world, and you're done. You don't put a lot of effort into it, because it's going to last for 8 videos. I don't actually need that one. Or do I want to do Link to the Past? Like, some of the next ones that come up, I guess.
I don't know. I may try that just as practice.
I mean, go look at what I'm talking about with, like, the,
Two Best Friends Play?
Two Best Friends Play.
Okay.
Game Grumps is pretty well published because Ego Raptor and JonTron are both animators? I don't know if that's true or not. One of them definitely is. So, like, that's his, like, living. And so, like, looking at that would be like, alright, I don't know that we're going to do that. Yeah. But you can kind of see how they mock up their slides from game to game.
Well, I mean, that makes sense if that's, like, the main thing you're doing. Like, that's your...
Yeah. Now, well, they don't really do the mock-ups on the openings, though. They just do the mock-ups on the static card. When you go look at Two Best Friends Play, you will see on some of them a much deeper level than on others. Like Chrono Trigger, you're like, wow, that's a lot of effort on Chrono Trigger.
But Chrono Trigger's a great game.
Yeah, but Chrono Trigger's a great game, and they're doing a long, full playthrough of that, so you can see that it made sense. On Metal Gear Rising, it literally just is their face drawn over a screenshot. Like, just their head is drawn over a screenshot. So, I think the danger is, like, the one of you that takes it and does it becomes the person, because then there's, like, you go look at theirs, there's, like, well, there's definitely a way that you always draw that person. Well, then maybe
we can have
each
two
other.
styles. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't...
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Especially as long as it's consistent within a single series. I don't think it's...
Well, and then it will be, because you only ever do it once.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I will just, you know, lay text on top of it for each episode. Or just actually the number. Number 2, number 3, number 4. And that'll be it. That's the title screens. So, yeah, okay, I got off on that, but I'm just trying to make sure I take up all housekeeping before I get into the news and stuff, because then we'll hit our topic of the podcast, and then, you know, we'll focus on that. I haven't been playing anything. I don't have any games to talk about.
I've been playing System Shock 2.
Really?
And...
What do you think about it,
playing.
I was a big fan of the System Shock games.
Did you play System Shock 2?
Yeah, I played 1 and 2.
Going back... It's really interesting that you...
Now, 2, if I remember right, got a little adventure gamey with an inventory and stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, 2 really shows its age. You know, just in terms of the graphics, in terms of the voice acting, and in terms
I've got a rose glasses nostalgia feel for that game of, like, it would be low quality, but it would be charmful.
I think part of it, and that's not to say it's bad, it's just...
Then again, 3D does not age well.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting is if I had not played it before and didn't have kind of that nostalgia for it, I'd play it and go, so? because we're so used to the idea of RPG elements melded with first-person shooter to various degrees that it's not really
as novel as it would have been at the time.
Still holds up really well, and still, I kind of like...
Is the atmosphere there?
Yeah, and even kind of the thematic, because you have like the organic versus the cybernetic, and
you kind of have the rogue ship, thing happening, rogue AI on the ship, and fucking with you, and
but even it gets down to the point where there's some robotic enemies and there's some organic enemies, and you kind of have to use different weapons on each of them.
I mean, not that I think System Shock was ever horror.
Yeah.
But it definitely had a high suspense to it, Yeah. It wasn't just a run-and-gun shooter.
It's... I mean, you can't run and gun, because you always kind of have to,
watch your resources.
Security,
and
watch your ammo, repair weapons.
And again, did you play Dead Space?
No, I did not.
I was going to say, can you see, the theory of Dead Space was System Shock 3 in development, and then
I've heard the same thing, BioShock is kind of the spiritual successor, and I definitely see that.
Yeah.
But, I kind of hate the fact that those games, and I'm assuming this is the case with Dead Space, I'm not sure, they lose some of the inventory management. They lose some of the things that make them...
Yeah, well, I mean, Dead Space is a case study in minimalism.
Right.
We should probably do a playthrough review in Dead Space. That'd be a good one.
Okay.
Because it is a case study in minimalist design. And getting by with... That's why 2 and 3 at some point have been such a fucking disappointment, because they got mainstreamed.
Yeah.
And, they throw in a multiplayer, and they add all these options and upgrades, and...
System Shock 2 actually had a multiplayer, but it was patched in. I never used it.
Well, I'm just speaking in the terms of Dead Space thing, and it's not what you were getting. It's not why I enjoyed Dead Space 1, I mean, it was back to having to think of every move. Dead Space is a good game in which you never feel in control. You never feel powerful. You never feel like... I am so armed to the teeth that when I bust through this door, I can take anything. No. You were like, fuck, a door. Shit. I don't want to have to go in this room, because I only have, 5 bullets left for this gun, and 2 for that one. And I don't want to waste any of them, because...
I still feel powerful in System Shock 2. It's just, there are times where it's like, crap, I need to go gather resources and kind of hole up and figure out my next move. But I can see the disappointment there, because like I say, from System Shock 2 to some of its spiritual successors, you lose a lot of that. It becomes more and more run and gun, more and more just straight up shooter instead of RPG shooter.
Yeah. But it was good games. I do remember enjoying those, but I played them when they came out. It was back when I was more PC gamer.
Yeah.
Anything happening on Green Man? Where are we at? What's the latest?
I am making a crowd scene and trying to get the crowd to activate and deactivate only once.
So, this is a planned thing? When you sat down and you've done your overall game plan, right?
Yes.
You do have an overall story, beginning, middle, end, progression for the character.
I have progression, I got a beginning, middle, and then I stumble towards something that could be the end.
Okay, but a crowd scene was called for.
There's going to be 3 more books, but she can totally write the last scene right now.
So when you did the game design, Doc, which was after you started building the game.
Yep.
Did you tailor it in, knowledge of RPG Maker? Or were you like, well, this is all of the things that I want, and then I will deal with how they become real later?
B.
All right.
Normal person behavior.
What that tells me is my whole, like, I have to get the funkworks.com website up and ready to run your game when it's ready for people to play. I got some time on that.
Yeah. I've got a scene where after, like, you have to go through this scene before you can get to the scene where you can go and get a lot of fighting done, but just getting through this scene is trying.
I've seen you create a lot more artwork.
Yes. Some...
Awesome. This is a great podcast.
This is great for the audio, isn't this? I've gone in and done a few more characters, NPCs mostly, and trying to get this world story. Got sidetracked by what is the world story of this world? Why is this world as it is? And then I remembered, doesn't matter, just write the story.
Well, I was going to say, unless your plot actually intertwines with why is the world the way it is, but that's been my problem.
That can help you, though, sometimes, like, to define a backstory that's never used, or the workings of the world, so that then you can then figure out, like, what would happen. Like, so there's a school of thought that says, write your character's backstory first, right?
Yeah.
Who this person is, where they come from, why they are the way they are, what other traits are, what their childhood was like just detail upon detail of the characters. Then create a world, a setting, or something for them to be in. Then have your cataclysmic event that sets them upon the journey. And the rest of it will kind of help figure it out, because you kind of know what the rules of the world are, and you understand what this person thinks, and so now you can figure out, like, what that person would do in that situation. And it's your choice how much of the backstory you reveal to the player, because by withholding key pieces of the backstory, the choice is obvious to you. But if the player doesn't know that piece of the backstory until later, it can be an interesting plot device or revealing of the world, and then things can unfold. But as the author of the world, things become really, really easy, because it's like, well, this person is this way because of these things, and so when they get presented by this challenge, they're going to do this, you know, or I want them to fix this trait in themselves that they have, so I want them to see this and have this revelation. And I've seen it recommended as a way of having a lot more honest characters.
Yeah.
And not characters that feel like, well, you wrote yourself to a fucking corner, didn't you? And you just made up some shit and, you know, guess what? I'm a Cylon too now. You know, like, you know, if you have that document at the beginning, then you can make sure your he's a Cylon story is consistent all the way through the game. Or you just come up with some magic retcon shit of like, but they're sleeper Cylons. Ha ha.
They're the final five. They're a different type of Cylon. I don't know. I'm talking about the tendency of stories to, like, it always has to be saving the world. There's never anything smaller than that.
Well, they're saving my part of the world.
So you're saying you have to save the world from the invading alien force, be it alien spiritual or aliens from actual space or alien to the culture.
Yes.
And then do you find out that the aliens were here all along and they're a really ancient race that have been living on the planet?
Yeah, or just...
Because they call this the All story in Giant Bomb, because it's like Halo and Aliens and Mass Effect and...
I'm talking more like... Okay, the difference between...
And fucking Assassin's Creed, believe it or not.
That's so sad.
I'm talking more about... Those would be what I'm talking about, but I'm talking more about, like, the difference between The Grudge 2 and Ju-On. Ju-On?
Jumanji?
No, the Japanese version of The Grudge. Like, the Japanese version of The Grudge is...
The Ring?
No, that's a different movie, similar time frame and concept, but I can't remember if Ju-On is The Grudge or if something else. But anyway, the Japanese version of The Grudge, you know, another family encounters the house, another family encounters the curse, or another group of people encounters the curse, it happens. In the second one, it's basically like the curse has escaped to the house and is spreading to the entire world, which kind of lessens the impact of it because
it's
not everything has to grow to that scale.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a complete tangent.
So, anything else to wrap up on Project Green Man? Does it have a name now?
No.
Green Man! Never gonna get past the Always Sunny references.
Eventually I'll make a name. Right now it's just Green Man. Man.
Well, see, I don't think I've seen that episode.
It's in several episodes.
Is it in several episodes? I mean, yes. I know the reference because it's like come up in other places, but I really just think of a guy in a head-to-toe green screen bodysuit.
Yes,
like they would use for mocapping.
Is.
Oh, is that what it is?
That is exactly what it is. Also, I mean, you could take that and use that as your inspiration. Like it could be Dayman or Nightman.
I looked at
in this
the
world
reference
of
that
wolves.
You showed me, and I was like, and the almost naked green man wearing spandex man is not going to enter this at any point. Green man.
Consider Dayman or Nightman, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, this is a world of wolves, so I don't know that this is going to work.
I don't know.
All right, let's bring up a couple news items here. First up, Radiant Games is celebrating 3 years. Sort of.
Sort of?
Yes. It's not really a celebration. Radiant Games, you may know, some trivia here. Mm-hmm. The only ever recipient of a GameMarx Game of the Year award.
Yep.
Because we only did that once. But he, basically there's the big project he talks about every now and then. He's been working on the big project. This was like the relieving, and forming the studio, my own thing to do my big project idea and get that out. And it's still not out. 3 years later. And he's kind of like, I'm not really celebrating 3 years because it's not like a good realization of like the thing I wanted to make. I have not in fact made yet. And it's working on it. And he's like, at this point, this is almost kind of sad to read in the article. At this point, getting out the big project so it can succeed or fail at least takes the uncertainty out of Radiant Games as whether it will succeed or fail, whether this is a good idea or not, and the limbo will end. And so it's like, I will celebrate just for the limbo ending.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, not a great 3 year. Also not a great news, but we want to give a shout out former Xbox Live indie gamers. Indie game developers, Arcado, they have
folded.
Kind of. Not really folded. So the studio is there. They are not bankrupt.
They just have no employees.
But they just kind of shut down. Not a whole lot of revenue coming in for their games, it sounds like. And then each of the two main partners sounded like wanted to go in different directions of like what they wanted to kind of work on next. So Arcadio just kind of sits as a company making nothing, I think. So it exists as a company, but basically they're out. And Arcadio series was a pretty good series on Xbox Live Indie Game
series. I think they've got. Didn't it say that they have like a couple of games that have been finished and are going to still come out?
Maybe they did Hell Yeah, Wrath of the Dead Rabbit. Which I guess was a larger iOS and everything cross-platform game. I haven't played that one. No, they don't have anything else coming out. So, but I mean, there is a lack of funds and also like going in different directions. So, it's kind of sad to see them go, you know. One of the better Xbox Live indie game developers getting out of game development completely. Well, I guess the people themselves aren't 100% out, but the studio is.
I always liked their art style. It was always neat and cute.
So this first article is going to set the tone of where we're going, and then the next articles will kind of like get us there. Develop has a good article written by Nick Gibson on the gaming fiscal cliff, and this comes from a high-level analysis through mergers and acquisitions. Basically, this is a investor-level view of the high-level companies, and you expect, I guess, or he expects, normal in the game industry, a high level of companies to be merged and acquired in a given year, you know? A high new number of studios to launch new IP, and that new IP gets sucked in, you know, EA buys them or somebody buys them and they change some charm, you know, and all that. And he talks about, like, these good years, 2010, and 2011 was these really high levels of a lot of merger and acquisition activity, but 2012 was not. Like, it completely kind of stopped. And he's pointing to a sign of a fiscal cliff in gaming. Now, this comes from, again, a investor's view and more of a high-level studio. So we're not talking indies here.
Yeah.
But we are talking about more THQ level collapses, right? More big-name publishers all of a sudden finding themselves hurting, because if, in his analysis here, you really need this mergers and acquisitions thing going on. That's just the way the game industry works. I point that out because it's kind of like a backdrop, but not really the point. I don't know if you have any comments you want to before I go on that.
No.
So, really, what I want to talk about this week started with Skullgirls. And I don't know if you saw this or not. Giant Bomb has a wonderful article recapping this, and going a little deeper. Skullgirls launched an Indiegogo campaign where they said, hey, we would like to add another additional character to Skullgirls, and the reality situation, blah, blah, blah. We need $150,000 to add this new character. Now, they got more than they asked for. They're on their way to their next stretch goal at 275, in which they add another character, the first male character in Skullgirls, which Skullgirls is a 2D fighting game. So
right.
It's a 2D style fighting game. And then I think at 600,000 there's a third character unlocked. But there was a bit of a backlash on the internet. There was, you know, as the internet wants to do, a what the fuck, $150,000 for one character? Like, you know, you guys are being excessive here. And I'm going to have other comments on this, but I want to make clear at this point, I am not saying it is not costing them $150,000.
Yeah.
There is conceptual bits of this argument and theory and brand stroking, which I think is what we're going to talk a lot about. And then there is reality of the moment. And the reality in the moment is it's going to be $150,000 if you want another Skullgirls, you know? The tech is set for the way it's got it done. The people who can do it are set. You know, the options are limited.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, it is too late to change any of these things. And that adds up. And Giant Bomb, you know, got in touch with them where they posted a breakdown. And, you know, I'll just break this down and we'll probably come back to this, but the breakdown here is $48,000 is to staff salaries. 8 people, 10 weeks. That works out, Dylan, I think they're like $600 a week. Okay? That is not much. That worked out to be like $30,000 a year, I think is what I worked out for those people. And those people have said, like, they are taking pay cuts. We want to make the game. We want to do this. Now, I'm assuming, hopefully, because they're kind of an indie studio that is doing this through a publisher, that some of the royalties off the sales of the game come back to the developers, and that's why they're so willing to take a pay cut. I just really hate the idea of developers taking a pay cut for the awesomeness of the game, because I feel like that is not a sustainable thing. That is a very dangerous,
and this
exploitative thing to do to developers.
This only works. This model only works well if you've got something like Skullgirls that has a following. Like, you can't... this can't happen. This is like a once in, every 3 or 4 years thing. This is not like an every month thing.
A company that has a very loyal fan base to their particular type of game and their niche, I don't think this works for Marvel vs. Capcom. No,
I don't think it works for... because Marvel and Capcom, they've got more resources than
right.
I don't think this works for something like Call of Duty. Is kind of where I was going with.
That's what I'm saying by Marvel vs. Capcom. Yeah. I'm keeping it within the fighting genre,
I see what
so
you're
it's like
saying.
kind of a 1-to-1. But if they said hey, if you want, Storm, that's Marvel, right?
Yes.
X-Men. Okay. If you want Storm in Marvel vs. Capcom, $150,000. Right? No, I don't know that that's going to fly, given that it's Capcom behind it, and it's also the Marvel license and things like that. But you have these other guys that are creating new IP, which this, combat niche, it's like, they want some new fighting games on there and things like that. So, and I believe this is fairly well received. Like our mutual friend John, host of Chainsaw Buffet, he likes Skullgirls, right? He's bought it and played it? Okay, yeah, so it's a good game. I'm not begrudging them anything against their game or their fan base.
And that's why they can do this.
Well, and they proved that their fan base wants it because they've already blown past their thing. And they're well on their way at this rate. They'll probably hit the $600,000 mark and there'll be 3 new characters. So that's $48,000. $30,000 goes to animation and cleanup contracting. Now this gets broken down later, but they are... See if there's a number here. No, the numbers are estimations. But there's basically somebody else who breaks down the numbers, Dave Lang, Iron Galaxy CEO, and who has worked on, or has worked closely with Capcom, and is responsible for upcoming Darkstalkers Resurrection. Is that a fighting game?
Darkstalkers is. I don't know. Yeah.
And then Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah.
He's working on both those titles. So the additional is building he's also building a proper version of Dive Kick. Whatever that means.
Wow.
But his quote specifically here is on that animation budget. Is like, say you need 500 frames of animation, you actually have to budget for 1,000 frames because a 2D fighter, when you go to balance and tweak, you have to recreate all these frames. It's a 2D fighter, so they're creating frames of animation mostly by hand, and that's what's soaking in $30,000. So that salary is not creating the animation. That is a subcontracted bullet. $4,000 for subcontracting voice acting, $2,000 for hitbox contracting, so doing the hitbox detection on the contracted animation, $5,000 for audio implementation, which I guess is lining up all the hit sounds and all the voice recording and things like that, $20,000 for QA testing, which again is separate from staff and salaries. $10,000 for first-party certification. That's not a negotiable option. That's just their licensing for the platform. $10,000 for Indiegogo. Not negotiable. That's a platform thing. $20,000 for manufacturing and shipping physical rewards, and they're playing. So $40,000 of the $150 is gone to overhead. $110 is in development for one character. So that is what they're at. Now we can come back to this. Z-Void Games had a good article because this touched off. Like, this touched off a lot, like, holy hell, you guys are, you know, ripping people off and, things like that. And then there's the other side to it here. Now, Z-Boy Games goes in here and he talks a little about this touched off, but he explains, Robert Boyd explains Z-Boy Games, though, how they set off and they made an early Breath of Death, an early 8-bit RPG. And then they made Cthulhu Saves the World a late-gen 8-bit RPG, leveraging their engine. And then they made Precipice of Darkness 3, an early-gen 16-bit game. And now they're making 4, which is a late-gen 16-bit game. And so they've kind of upgraded and built and got to where they want to be, but they've also, like, they have all these games released along the way. And I even commented on there, and I'm like, I don't want to inject too much of my thing into this discussion yet, because I'm kind of interested always in your part, but to me the key takeaway is that you weren't, like, starting from scratch. Like, you built systems that allow you to speed up your development of the games that you want to make later.
And I'm sure that's the case with, well, to a certain extent, Skullgirls. In this example, like, they've got all the tools. They just have to build the new elements.
I mean, they have all the tools. They have to build new elements, but we're going to come back to it. How about that? Okay. The last article and news item here.
That's why I'm not saying much. I'm kind of interested in
is
kind of the whole
from our number one bro gamer, Cliffy B. Basically has this article which roughly translates to games are expensive, bro. I mean, and it's almost to the point where I'm reading it and the tone is like, you just have to accept it, you know? And there is some shit of, like, adjusting for inflation, games are cheaper than they've ever been. It's like, well, maybe.
The price of games or the cost to make a game?
The price of the games. But
they stay fairly static.
They do. We just had a recession. Yeah. Employment, you know, shift and things like that. Cost to make a game, obviously, not the same.
Yeah.
And what is always delivered may not be the same value averaged out. Like, so that always hits like a constant debate that I come back to, right? And I bring up on our show quite a bit, is that you can't divorce the talk of the games industry without talking about the games, right? Like, you can't, and like he's talking about in there of like, you know, you just need to accept microtransactions and all this and this shit, and, you know, and it's just like, he goes off a little bit too. There's a little bit of angst here of like, EA puts in microtransactions and they're the devil, you know, but, you know, Valve puts in microtransactions and they can do no wrong. And there's like, there's a fucking chip on your shoulder, Cliff. Like, it's obvious that there was some like, we do this shit and we get blamed for it, and Valve does this shit and they don't. But it's like, wait a minute.
That's rampant, though.
Valve took Team Fortress 2, a decade-old game, and made it free to play, and like found new life in an old game that otherwise would not have been.
I call it recycling.
EA put microtransactions in a brand new $60 title to buy guns and weapons with Dead Space 3.
At random.
If you can't accept that there's a difference there, you can't just lump it in and say like, oh, you can't hate microtransactions. It's like, wait a minute. You have to talk about the games, not just the games industry. And it's like, microtransactions in Team Fortress 2 are done in a way that does not impact my gameplay. I am never buying a better weapon, right? I'm buying fucking hats, right? That's the joke, right? I'm buying hats, skins, and things like that, and customizing my character, but I'm not buying wins. But in Dead Space 3, I'm buying wins. Even though it's a single-player thing, I am buying the ability to break this game, basically. I can just go into... So there's weapon upgrade system in the game, and you go up to a bench, and it's like, you need this many resources to upgrade this weapon. And you can collect the resources in the gameplay, or just buy a bunch of Smurf berries, and now you've got all the money that you need to do that. And what's disgusting about that is this is a $60 game.
Yeah.
This isn't like they put it out on $30 with like, we're experimenting with this new thing. This is, no, you want to have your cake and eat it too. And that's what Cliff's article does not get at all.
No, but I think at least he's right in the fact that there's kind of this black and white approach to microtransactions. Like, some people are, good and cannot be touched because they're cool, and some people are evil, and there needs to be more gray area there.
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily black and white. There are ones doing it correctly, and the community and the gamers and the consumers are reacting positively, and there's ones doing it negatively, and the consumers are acting negatively. And I just think it's like, suck it up, bitch, you're in the free market. Now, if they bitch, and they prove to be a vocal minority, and, go on, which, fucking, Clash of Clans. Just fucking bringing in $4,000 a month gamers. And I can understand why EA sees that and wants to suck them in. But it's like, that's evil, and it's not sustainable. But if you want to try to make a short-term money grab, go for it. Like Zynga basically rose and collapsed on that model, that addiction model. You try to chain addiction to microtransactions. Let's see, what's another example of bad? Like Mass Effect. 3 has microtransactions in the multiplayer. And again, it's kind of disgusting. Because it's like you go into multiplayer and you fight in multiplayer and you earn points to prestige, and then this allows you to unlock crates. And the crates give you random upgrades. So these are actually make you better in the game items. In multiplayer.
TF2 does that as well. I don't know if...
What does that do?
Like, you'll pick up crates in TF2, and then you have to pay so much to be able to unlock them.
Okay, so I probably haven't played TF2 enough to see that.
Yeah, I haven't really seen it. I've heard people talk about it. I don't know if you can upgrade or not, but my point is, like, it's very, like, obviously it's less gray in the case of TF2, but...
Yeah, again, you're taking a game that's so old that
but it's still working on the nature of addiction. Like, the people who get into it...
And TF2, again, was free to play. Mass Effect and Dead Space 3, right, are not free to play.
Again, yeah.
Those are full-on $60 titles.
But I'm just saying, let's not pretend that microtransactions don't play on some form of addiction wherever they show up. Like, there is...
There's more exploitative implementations of those.
I'll agree. There is a range, but it's not like...
Where, and Mass Effect tries to play into the exploitative nature because the crates that you get with your points are random.
Yeah.
And you don't know until after you get it. So
that is the case with TF2.
It is literally gambling when you go in with real money and like, I want to buy some crates with real money. Did I get what I want? No. Did I get what I want? No. Did I get what I want? No.
It's the CCG model, though.
Maybe I should put in 3 more, 3 more tokens in the slot machine, and maybe I'll get what I want. And that works into like sunk costs because like after you've already bought 6 crates, you don't want to feel like you just wasted 6 crates worth of money, so you put in the 7th, maybe they'll get something, and then you can feel good about your, expenditures, but
again, that's the CCG model, and there aren't, there's been bubbles of CCGs along the way. It happened in the 90s, but, Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!
But you didn't walk up to the CCG and plop down $60 up front.
No, you didn't.
You bought one pack. And you just slowly bought your way in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a better, it's like, okay, you might...
Oh, I definitely agree. That's a better model.
You will play...
You're still pulling the lever on the slot machine either way.
Right, but there's a sweet spot of, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? There's this nice sweet spot of, I'm really into this, and I have paid $60 to get to, the where I'm at, and I'm enjoying the game a lot. And it's like, I paid about $10 over the lifetime of this game, and I've had my fill. And it's worked for me because I wouldn't have tried this game at $60. But since it was free to play, I downloaded it and I gave it a few bucks. I was having some fun, and then found out it wasn't for me, and I got to step away.
Well, my argument is that the $60 game that uses microtransactions, yeah, that's scummier. But in neither case is there are some rational, cost-based decisions you're making. But if they're hooking you into pulling the slot machine, that's going to be a huge draw no matter how much you paid for it.
Right. And that is Clash of Clans. That is Zynga, right? Like, they are still free, but they are designed to hook you in and then exploit you that way. I mean, this, and he mentioned this the other one, way too, of like the outrage against day one DLC. And again, you can't, like, what he's missing is they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. If people go off and buy that fighting game for $60 and find out there's on-disc day one DLC, they're pissed off. Now, if you gave them that disc for $30 and told them unlock the additional characters, and for $60 you would unlock everything, this way you could buy it, and then if you like it, unlock the characters you want. You might save a little bit, or you might want to unlock them all. It gets disgusting in other ways where they try to microtransactions. Like, you go out and you buy these season passes now are offensive to me, because it's like, hey, you don't want to be microtransaction to death while we release DLC out over the course of the year, but you really love Call of Duty, so just buy the season pass. But there's no statement of what you're getting in that season pass, right? Like, they could release one map pack that entire year, and you're done. You're
buying in good faith that, like, they're gonna give you something without.
And I think that's just like, no, they need to have the thing done that you're buying.
Yeah.
If you're paying full price.
Well, I think.
And if you want to pay less than full price at the moment, I mean, if you want to, like, get some money before it's done, then it's less than full price. And I think this model is proven time and time again, especially with indie games, especially with charging for alphas and betas and in-development things. If it's in development, it's not full price because it's not done. And so I'm taking more of a risk, this is going to be a crappy game, or that I just may be tired of it by the time you finish it, right? Like, that's a risk. I might not want to come back to it when you finish it. So, I'm helping you offset your development cost and helping you gauge your market, honestly. I mean, there's an advantage to that of, like, what's the market for this? Like, I can't even sell these discounted alpha, beta progress builds. Maybe I need to rethink where this thing's going. But at the same time, you do build a fan base who'd be happy to give you that, feedback. So it's a really good, there's a lot of good in this process of microtransactions and splitting the cost up. But I think from Cliff's article and his perspective, which is he's very still corporate. I mean, he's very still running Epic Mega Games, having his titles published by Microsoft and EA, looking at the world of how, like, guys walk into his office and said, "We've run the numbers, Dave, and only games with multiplayer sell better than games that don't." And you know what? Yeah, statistically that's true, but I go back to, you can't normalize the game industry. You have to look at the individual games and what makes sense. Did multiplayer sell Mass Effect? Fuck no. Did multiplayer sell Dead Space? Fuck no. And those were wasted resources that at a minimum didn't need to be spent, and you save that money on development, or could have done something else in development that was cut, because nobody is buying those games for multiplayer.
Although, I will argue,
when you average it out, the average game is a first-person shooter multiplayer, so yeah, you can't release a first-person shooter without multiplayer.
I think in some cases they are using the idea of multiplayer, whereas, like, when you first hear about, oh, you can play this with your friends or whatever, like, you have this vision of what it can be, just like any other product announcement, and then when you finally get the specs,
I can guarantee you for Dead Space 3, that was 100% rejected, because it not only makes no fucking sense. Even in like the most asinine way that you can make that to make sense is to play Left 4 Dead style, where one player is playing the horror creatures. But then when it's like, you know, couch co-op, it's like, it's supposed to be horror. And nothing like destroys the mood as like cutting up and joking with your buddy on the couch and mocking the game. You know, it's like, once you start Mystery Science 3000, the game, you're not going to get scared by it anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not it's not what people are going to that game and playing it for. And it also ignores why, like, you know, it was a reaction to, like, Dead Space 2 not hitting the numbers that they wanted to hit, but they're not listening to the reasons it didn't hit, was that it strayed from the first one, and then, like, they're just doubling down in the wrong direction, because now the corporate money guys come in, and they're like, well, what we need is some of these microtransactions in this game and multiplayer, because look at these numbers, Dave. You know, we got the charts, and these are what these microtransactions do. Look how much money they're buying on this iPhone. We got to get some of that iPhone stuff in there. So make sure there's an iPhone tie-in to Dead Space that requires them to go online. And Cliff goes to the point where he's talking about, like, Origin versus Steam. Of, like, Steam sucked with it launch, and you guys just don't give Origin a chance. And it's like, you know, there were misgivings about Steam when it launched, but they proved at every step of the way they were not trying to be the scary thing that everybody assumed them to be.
Yeah.
Origin has proven at every step of the way to be the scary thing, with the game-breaking DRM enforcements and just fucked up installs and shit just not working and monitoring your system and just crap. And it's like, you don't get a pass on that, you know? You can't look at Steam and say, well, Origin is like Steam, and you guys are just being one-sided. You're like, no, we gotta go into the details here, because the devil is in the details, and the reason that Steam is succeeding at Origin has not to date succeeded, is in the details, and it's in the way they react to the community, and it's in even his attitude. Like, the whole post reflects the attitude of, you know, you damn gamers, just, you know, some of you are bitching loudly on the internet, so you just bitch loudly on the internet, and you're vocal minorities when we ignore you, and then we get upset when nobody buys the game, because damn it, we're making great stuff that you all should just be thankful that it's here for and that we produce, and there's like a sense of self-entitlement, you know, it's like, because we spent $13 million on a game, makes it a high-polished, great game. And it's like, no. And I can cite hundreds of games that prove that.
I agree. Well, I think the way I look at it is, in some cases, there's entitlement on both sides. Like, if these games are really terrible, don't buy them. Don't, you know, like, choose, like, that is a sacrifice you have to make, but, you know, and you're probably not going to change, like, the big name games, still gonna sell a ton of games, but don't buy them. Don't, you know, like...
And it comes from an era of, like, right now, if you have a hit with a Call of Duty...
Yeah.
Then the publisher turns around and goes, how do I release this once or twice a year?
Yeah.
I need a new Call of Duty game every year at a minimum. Let's milk this shit for all it's worth. You know? And it's like, okay, you're spending $13 million on these games, releasing them every year, and you don't see how this fails? You don't see how this thing brings it all itself down upon collapse? Of like, you cannot possibly on a yearly cycle spend a $13 million wisely enough on creating a new unique gameplay experience within a year's development cycle, because that's to release, man. And then I know they're trying it by ping-ponging studios and basically having a studio put out a game every other year.
Yeah.
But even 2 years is amazingly short for, like, to me, any kind of, like, giant overarching epic game that you're going for that just super level of polish. should really be 4 years in development. You know, you start going longer than that, and you just got problems. You just got like, okay, what's inefficient?
Forever.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't mean that means active coding development, but it seems like there should at least be 6 months of throwing shit on the wall and figuring things out. Like, it feels like, okay, I enjoyed Mass Effect 3. I think it stands on its own as it shipped. I'm in the minority on that opinion, but I do feel like it stands alone as it shipped. It's fine with the DLC. I mean, not with the DLC, with the with the extra credits DLC stuff that they had, director's cut. I haven't played any DLC they've sold for the game yet. I may or may not get around to it. Just that Microsoft is shit about discounting that stuff, and I don't want to pay full price for that because it really does seem overpriced for what you get. So, and also like, some of the DLC gives you new characters, which then, like, to get the most of a new character in Mass Effect means replaying the game, and I don't know, I'm interested in replaying the game just to see if this new character has new dialogue in some scenes. Like, that seems like the kind of shit I'll just YouTube, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, unlock that mystery. But a lot of people have problems with that story, the way it was written, the way it delivered, and it feels like if you guys took more time between 2 and 3 to nail your story shit down. I'm not talking about development. I'm just talking about the designers in the room thinking through the logical paths and conclusions and bouncing that off of people and ideas. And 4 more months of that probably would have been a much better received game. Because I think a lot of people don't give credit for is how awesome that game is up until the very end. Right? So the end is weak compared to the rest of the game. I don't think it's bad or wrong, but compared to the rest of the game and the way the other stories have these epic, climactic conclusions for all the sub-stories, those feel more complete and defined than the actual ending of the universe. You know, ending of Shepard, ending of this trilogy in Mass Effect, you know, like, and those games make a trilogy. They make a nice trilogy. Which I still say is damn worth playing because, I mean, it is one of the best trilogies. Have you played them?
I played part of the first.
Really?
Yeah.
That's another good one to throw on deck.
Well, I think I would do better if I didn't, like, try to completionist everything and, like, oh, I need to explore all these planets. No, just point me where I need to go.
I completionist the shit out of that game multiple times over for each game.
I just couldn't do it. I tend to... I don't know that I get into sci-fi RPGs quite as much as I do fantasy, so...
So, alright, so we talked about, like, So, onto this. We talked kind of about, like, the free-to-play and stuff like that, and, you know, some of those rants. I do think there is, and partially due to crowdfunding and things like that, and also App Store, indie games play a part of this too. I think there's a disconnect in the consumer's mind and the gamer's mind of what it truly costs to produce the level of games they want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
like,
true of most things.
Like,
not just games.
I don't know. Like, I don't think if you ask somebody, are you shocked by what it costs to do The Dark Knight? They would be shocked. Like, they kind of accept where Hollywood is at.
They've accepted it, but that doesn't mean they're going, you know, like, if you gave them a line-by-line breakdown of the budget, kind of like with Skull
Right. I'm not talking
that would,
either side. I'm not talking line-by-line breakdown. I'm talking total number. I think if you give total number...
Yeah.
That there's no way. That's just so much wasted money. $13 million on the game is ridiculous. You know, and like Psychonauts 2.
Yeah.
$22 million or whatever.
Yeah, even
the price
not
tag of that.
Assumed that it would be cheaper than it would.
Yeah, but when they actually costed that out, they're looking at $26 million for Psychonauts 2. And then a lot of people hear that, and it's just like, what the fuck? That's insane, you know? Like, people are cranking out these games on Kickstarter for $30,000, $40,000, and, you know, you're a studio, so for $1 million, you should be able to do whatever you want. And I think there is a good hefty bit of blame for this devaluing that sits in the mind of the consumer.
Yeah.
Not understanding that what this shit actually takes and what this shit costs, and how
it's vague magic computer stuff that happens.
It is, but it's like how it actually, like, you know, the next generation demands that much more high quality textures, that much higher level resolution. So bringing that over to Skullgirls, so tying this back into Skullgirls here, like $30,000 for hand animated frames sounds like a fuck ton for one character, right? But Street Fighter.
Yeah.
What are we talking on Street Fighter? 720 by 480? Maybe? Maybe that's the dimensions of that game?
Yeah, that's assuming you're
That's
not
the
talking
native
about like the
resolution?
HD remix.
And then, no, I'm talking about the original Street Fighter 2.
Whatever
Mortal Kombat, right? Those gen games. Maybe we're looking at 720 by 480, but probably not. It's probably running at half that resolution and scaled up. Because that's pretty much what most games do, right? You know, scale up the final frame, you know, the final composite image to the frame. So they're probably running at half that. So if you're going in and hand drawing an area of a character, and they on screen represent 200 by 200 pixels for the big green dude, whatever the hell his name is.
Blanca,
yeah. You can see how when you update that to HD resolutions and Skullgirls, that 200 by 200 region has now become 600 by 600, right? And so that's 600 pixels squared, not, you know, added, right? So you're looking at, before you had 400 pixels to draw, potentially. Now you have 3,600 pixels to draw per frame. And guess what we've done with the frame rates?
Increase.
Yeah, you don't dare run less than 60 frames, right? I think on the Xbox, 30 frames is kind of the accepted norm. But PC games, like, oh man, what game did they... The Cave. People got pissed on the Steam forums that the double-defined adventure game, The Cave, ran at 30 frames per second on the PC. Like, there are numerous threads bitching about this. Like, it's not 60 frames per second. Or it's not uncapped to run as fast as my machine. Which, I think the Double Fine engine is just locked at 30 frames per second, which is why all the games there do that. And it's just a fundamental change they have to make in their engine before the games will run there. But there was a lot of hand-drawn 2D art going on in The Cave as well. And doubling the frame rate doubles the amount of frames to draw. And we've already exponentially increased the number of frames. It's real easy to see how, like, we're into $30,000 now. And that gamers could very easily not expect that cost, because it's like, it didn't cost $150,000 per character at Street Fighter 2. Well, then again, you had a lot less effort to do. And now the exponential amount of effort that goes into the thing has grown massively.
Well, I think there's always the impression that better technology always makes us more efficient. And this is a case where the opposite is probably, like, well, yeah, very likely true. It works backwards from, like, so, kind of the axiomatic way we envision it.
You've set up my argument, though, against the game studios. Of, like, your games are fucking inflated costs. And you have waste in those budgets. Alright? And number one, right there is kind of what you set up, of, like, this complexity that has come in, right?
Yeah.
If you're making a fighting game, you're making a 2D fighting game in fucking 2012, 2013, modern era right now, and you know that this exponential explosion, like, let's say you're targeting the next-gen platformers, okay? You're going to make a 2D fighting game, because those are always popular, but you're targeting PS4 now, okay? So, you're wanting to run true 1080. Okay, yeah. We're not going to upscale anymore because the hardware now can run full resolution and gamers are demanding it, and that's where you need to go to be a next-gen title. And so you've got another order of magnitude increase in the frame rate in the 60 frames a second in the resolution that you have to do. Why the fuck are you building a system that requires you to hand animate these frames? Are you seriously telling me you can come up with no better way, knowing going into this problem, that the biggest budgetary drain, the biggest complexity point in a fighting game is the number of characters, right? Because it's an n squared problem, right? Every fighter that you add to the game upsets the balance multiplied by every other fighter in the game.
Like the balance of game mechanics?
Yeah. Like when they add a new character, this is why QA costs 20 grand, okay? On their quote. They have to rebalance that. Now, I don't know that that problem is solvable, right? That's not a technology problem.
Well,
that's a function of every fighter can fight every other fighter, and you don't want a cheap shot Ryu, right? Is he the cheap shot guy? Hadouken? Who's the guy that you can juggle people with that's like a cheap character to play in Street Fighter 2?
I don't remember.
know. I know Akuma was pretty damn powerful when he
But there's basically like I know there's some complaints that certain fighters are overpowered.
Yeah, I mean
and
that always happens.
Ken is the one that people bitch about.
I don't know. I mean,
I've heard on Giant Bomb that people bitch about people playing Ken.
in the new one, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So maybe Street Fighter 4 or whatever. So that's not a problem. I think technology solves. I might come back to that and caveat that and put some footnotes. But going into this knowing, okay, we're going to design a game. We're going to make a 2D fighter for modern system consoles. Here is this exponential explosion of cost. We have a team of smart motherfuckers because we could make a 2D fighting game on next-gen consoles. Start brainstorming, guys. You know, where is an animation system? How can we rig up skeletal animation systems in our fighting game, but still get the look that we want of the 2D fighter? Do we go to 3D with some weird shading, shaders happening? Do we go to, things that procedurally generate animation frames based on keyframes? What do we do here to get the look that we want without the effort that it takes? Because it is a known.
Yeah.
It's not a known unknown. It's not an unknown unknown, right? It is a known quantity that you're going into it. And I think this is a bigger part of the games industry larger problem of pump the studio with money, release the game, lay them off. Pump the studio with money, release the game, lay them off. Because back to Z-Boyd's article, Robert Boyd's article, Z-Boyd games stay together for every game. And they get better working with each other between every game.
And they build up
their engine and their IP and their technology through every game. When you are pumping a bunch of money into a studio, bringing them together, contracting the shit out of it, making the game, and then breaking up the band, you can't benefit in the long run from a well-oiled team. Back to Cliffy B and bitching about Valve. They are the same fucking Valve through all of this. They are not contracting this shit out. They are all in-house for the most part with what they do.
They're not juggling between two different game studios to release a game each.
I've been interrupting you. You got a point.
I think fighting games are an interesting case because they have to run at 50 frames or 60 frames per second. Like, that is key because of the timing involved. In a lot of cases, especially like fighting games and JRPGs, a lot of people do want the hand-drawn effect. Like, you can fake it, but there's only so much you can do. And I think, in some cases, it's like, it's a question of demand. Like, if you come up with a keyframing system, like you're talking about with 3D models and cell shading or whatever, there's going to be a lot of gamers that are going to say, wow, that's pretty cool. Look what they did. And be amazed at the technology in addition to your cost savings. The problem is there's going to be a lot who are going to complain, like, I miss how it was done in the old days, rabble.
There's a rabble vocal minority that don't even know what the fuck they're saying. Because in Street Fighter 2, you could count Blanca's frames of animation for punching and time shit. At 60 frames a second? No, you fucking can't. Alright? Your human eye is not actually sensing all 60 of those frames, and you're not going to be able to, you know, play that. If you want that, what you really want them to do is remake Street Fighter 2, and in that case, you want low resolutions running at 15 frames or 10 frames a second so you can count that shit. You actually don't want a modern HD fighter.
I don't know. I think the industry is going to give people what they think people want. And yeah, like you said, the vocal minority is driving a lot of this, but you know, I do think this is true of most games. Like I said, fighting games are a very specific niche, and that's almost like, I know you're going there for the Skullgirls example, but that seems like a tough nut to crack, and it might be like first-person shooters or, you know, something like that's where you.
Now the second thing, the second part on the Skullgirls thing that they highlight, is I wrote down this list and it's like contracting.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they don't even have the animators on staff. Okay, because they're doing the contracting. Yes, for a studio that is making a retro game that is a 2D fighter, if you don't have 2D fighter talent on, I mean, it's back to the rule of you contract out everything but your core business values and your core expertise, right? So we are the studio that makes a 2D retro fighting game, so we should have people who make a 2D retro fighting game on house. Music? No. Not core to the experience. Voice acting? No. Not core to the experience. But frames of animation and shit, core to the experience, and they should kind of be on the team. And again, I get that, like, okay, every studio has points where the animator, the graphic artists, are no longer needed. It's in QA, it's in balancing, right? And then it looks like, oh, why do we justify them on the team? And it's like, you justify them on the team because over the long haul, they work faster, better with your programmers, right? Your costs and increase in complexity and bugs come not from the code base, but from where two people have to communicate. And anytime two people have to communicate, there's going to be a misinterpretation.
Yeah.
That's going to be the real cost. It's going to be the real source of the bugs and the real communication. We've talked about this before on the podcast. I know my code, and you know your code. And as soon as I see something wrong in my code, I know exactly where to go, the exact line to fix it. The same with you. Those bugs cost us nothing. The bugs between our code are nightmares to debug. Because the bugs where my code hands you off something and your code hands me off something, we have talked to each other of like, okay, I'll give you this object and you can do this, and yes, I'll do that with it back. And then somewhere we have a miscommunication between each other. It's not obvious on who had the miscommunication, what it was, you know, and finding that is a much deeper problem because then it involves me debugging the code I'm not familiar with, us getting back together, having more conversations, so meetings get pushed off, those are the expensive bugs. Over time, we learn how each other think and work, and I can more aptly understand and communicate with you better, so that A, when a bug comes up, we can communicate quicker to the solution, but also, before we get to that point, we have the experience of working together that we know. Okay, when Mike says this, he tends to leave out this bit of information that I fucking need, and you just ask the question then. It's like, okay, so are you saying, like, the last time we did this, you want to do this again, or different? Right?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a problem, because it's a problem of outsourcing. Like, I think this is more a problem, and I'm not a business person, so I'm speaking about things I don't fully understand. But I think this is kind of where the philosophy behind a lot of American business has gone, where you just outsource and you increase efficiency to the point where a lot of the efficiency gain, or in a lot of cases, you're cutting inefficient waste, but you're also cutting kind of these intangible assets And like
believe it or
efficiency
not,
kills
on
at
this,
some point.
there have been a number of companies that have pulled back in-house all their outsourced stuff.
Right.
Because it actually ended up costing more, not in raw man-hours, but in customer satisfaction and product rework and miscommunications.
And the assumption is you can always, like, that's always going to stay the same, even if you change everything else.
And, like, I mean, it comes back, and I think definitely for the software market, I've seen it swing, the pendulum swing heavy back in the way of developers, of like companies looking for developers and not really wanting contractors even. Whereas I can remember an age where they were outsourcing a lot, and at best they wanted to contract with you. And the problem I see right now at my level is nobody's willing to pay me what my rates. You know, I come in and like this is what I'm charging, and you said like you're needing top tier because they want to have it all, right? They want to have the guy in house with deep experience, and then it's like, oh, you guys, you're perfect. You're in house and you're deep experience, and then it's like, yeah, and then I demand a top tier salary.
Yeah, and then.
And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't understand your thing here, because if you want somebody better than the lead developer, then you will pay them better than the lead developer's salary. And then, you know, the thing that always gets thrown back, you know, is like, well, that's what we pay our manager, you know, that's manager level stuff and all that. And I'm like, your company's misaligned. If you're paying your managers more than your workers, and this probably happens in the game industry as well, to inflate the cost. If the managers are making more than the artists and the developers and the workers, you have a problem. Management should not be a career path out of production, okay? Because, I mean, at some point, it's like you want to make more money. You get older, you have kids, you have a family, you want to, you know, make a better salary, you don't want to put in the hard hours and those kind of things. You become very talented at what you do, but then you run into this paradox of, if I stay a developer, if I stay the artist, if I stay the guy producing the stuff, I'm at the top of my career salary. The only way that I get better benefits, better salary, better promotions, better deals is to go into management now and quit doing the one thing I'm excellent at for this company.
The one thing you've been training yourself to do.
Right. The one thing I have 10,000 hours at. The one thing I am an expert now on. I mean, there is the idea of like cross-training and all that, but really, more companies need to read, and I think this goes back to the game development costs. More companies need to realize that managing a project does not require knowledge of how to code. It requires a basic knowledge of what goes on in coding.
It's a different set of skills, even.
And then also that managers, by their very nature, okay, and the different set of skills and the people that can provide them, are paid less than the developers. And that shouldn't even be a shock or a major like thing you have to hide at the company or anything like that. I mean, if you've got the kind of managers that have to tell people what to do to get them to do things, you fire those people.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're in that situation, that is a more expensive cost than any of your other issues. You fire that person, you get around them, and if you have managers who are bad managers, you know, then you look at those managers as well, and I'll take that. Now, I mean, I'm not talking about just, like, learning and making mistakes. I'm talking about actual, like, I have to come in here every day and tell you, like, look, what I'm going to do is here, I'll pick this up, and I'll move it over here, and I'll tell you this is where it needs to be. All right, you got it? Good. Then you come back in a week later, and it's like, where you at? It's like, you're right there. Like, no. All right, let me show you. Pick it up, we'll move it, now we're over here. All right, cool. Now I'll come back in a couple weeks, and it's like, you're still there. You just need to get rid of them, okay?
Yeah. Well, I think part of the problem there with manager salaries is the perception is that, you know, knowledge management and that, you know, and services and that sort of thing are worth more than, you know, low-level production work.
Yeah,
and that's American business philosophy.
It's rooted in Industrial Revolution thinking, okay?
Yes.
That the supervisor makes more than the factory workers, because the factory workers are replaceable cogs, right? He's just required to keep them going. But in, what does Seth Godin call it? The creative economy, or something like that? Yeah. Whatever you call the shit that we do now is, right?
Well,
it's actually the reverse now. The manager is to make sure I'm not being bothered by other managing bullshit, right? Well, I need specs, I need a meeting, I'm in too many meetings, I need to be free of distractions, okay, to create the shit that I create. Because the manager cannot step in now and do my role, whereas the supervisor always could step in that role. And also, I'm not replaceable. You know, this is the Seth Godin linchpin book, right? I'm a linchpin, right? You pull me, and the whole thing comes down. You know, the company may freak out at the idea of, like, being wrapped up at one guy leaving could cost them so much.
It always happens, though.
But at the same time, what the company's asking for is a domain expert, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to work the fastest and the most efficient and make the most money back by having this domain expert. You have to realize he's worth more than your managers.
Well, and what I'm talking about is not necessarily even specific to a creative economy or whatever, just in general. The idea that it's kind of this long-term effect of the idea that, well, if you want a good career path, don't aim at the low-level production stuff. Aim at, like, the, you know, business management, you know.
Yeah. Instead of landing, like, okay, there's low-level coders, too. Okay? Yeah. There are entry-level positions in low-level coding that gets done, right? Okay? In the games world, these are your tools developers, right?
Yeah.
These guys are making internal tools, stuff that does not ship, but that helps game creation and game content, and those kinds of things. And then, like, you kind of graduate deeper into your developers that are assigned tasks, but they are in shipping code.
Yeah.
So, like, I need you to implement the animation of this fighting character. It's like the other 7 that we've done. Okay, good. Now they're on their career path. And then you move up into I'm designing the system, right? I'm working out the mechanics. These are how all the characters are going to be implemented. These are going to be objects. These are going to be the interfaces. This will be the method, the flow. The guys beneath me, if you are in such a position that there are guys beneath you, or second-tier developers, will then work on those components, okay? Like, you're laying out the architecture of the systems, right? The problem is once you get to the guy that can system architect the game, okay, or any software project, once you get to the system architect level, the next step is management, right? And that's exactly what you were just saying. Like, your target is management. And now you take the guy who has the knowledge of building the product and tell him to start managing the timelines and when deliverables and, you know, get stuff to marketing. And not only is the architect not qualified for that position, those aren't the skills he spent honing.
Yeah.
And he'll do a bad job at it. You're way overpaying that position that's inflating your costs. So you're getting a bad manager at a high cost. And we know this time and time again in the software industry. Managers suck. I mean, that is a running joke in the software industry, that managers and that you fail upward and they're all just failed coders, which may or may not actually be true.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of coders who were there early at the company, and the company was going through massive growth, so they just kind of got promoted into management because they, you know, were rapidly growing and they moved people up. And so, yeah, their code looks bad, but you weren't there at the moment, like, this was needed and how fast the company was growing, that it got written. And
of course, everyone's code looks bad to everyone else.
Yeah, legacy code is simply code that I did not write.
Yes.
So there's all that plays into it. But the guy is generally bad at management, because when are you working on people skills writing code?
Well,
right? I mean, that's always like the conference. I even put that in my blog post today. Like, that's always like the conference thing of like, developers need to take time to learn people skills, because that's the area that can help your career more than anything else. It's like you can master the communication and the person skills. You are now a rare breed. A developer who can both communicate well and program well is a linchpin.
Yeah. And my point about the long-term issues is if you're, like, if you think the way to, if you pattern your education and your early experience around, I need to learn all these vague management skills, then what you end up with is an economy of people who can't really contribute any more than vague, you know, ideas, intangible things.
Right.
So,
Right.
You know.
And, you know, it's like when you watch fucking credits for any AAA game,
Yeah.
right? I remember watching the credits for Mass Effect 3. They fucking go on and on and on. I mean, and there's a part where I'm thinking there needs to be a better criteria of who's listing credits. You know, I mean, there is basically like, I got the lunches for the meetings, you know, feeling of like, how many of these people in these credits contributed meaningfully
To be fair,
to
though,
the game development?
all of those, if the companies pay them, all of those are contributing to the cost. So,
Right.
I mean, if you're trying to...
No, I'm not talking about the cost right now. I'm talking about like just going to the long list of credits, and then I'll talk about the cost. But just going to the long list of credits, it's like, how many of these meaningfully contributed to the game, are working on the game and products shipping the game, and how much of this is bullshit support? Like HR staff, it should not be in credits, you know? Snack services and shit are not in credits. But it does start making you wonder when you're watching 400 people in credits, if I'm only getting the feeling like there's 200 people in this 400 person credit roll that actively contributed to the game,
Well,
why are there another fucking 200 people in the budget of this game? And how much of this $13 million thing is just that now it's a big game and we have all our lunches catered and all these management meetings happen, and we're paying for all this circus shit going around the actual game itself.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm talking about like PR trips where they're staying in all nice hotels and they're flying in journalists constantly and showing games off and all of that. All of the, because we're a AAA game, we have to act big.
I agree. I think the difficulty in making this judgment is we're outside the system. So we are, you know, on one hand, I like the idea of including a lot of those people in there because without, you know, the support staff, the game doesn't get made. Like, things don't get done. Because I've been in office environments before where, yeah, like, the people who are not technically, you know...
You're
like
saying if Cliffy B doesn't have a coffee girl, no fucking Gears of War.
Not necessarily. Well, okay, coffee girl seems like if you've got one person for but, you know, there's stuff going on in that office that is not specifically coding and programming.
There's stuff going on in Cliffy's office.
I'm sure there is.
Hey, bro.
That would explain a lot.
Did you check my Twitter, bro? Come on, this is a guy that posted his wife naked playing Xbox.
His wife naked playing Xbox.
Oh, yeah, you don't remember that?
No.
Oh, yes, he did that. His wife is sitting on the bed naked, and he took a picture of that of like, check out my wife naked playing Xbox.
Why did we even have the discussion? Is he a douchebag? Is he not? Like, that's kind of creepy.
Oh, yeah, he had to take it down. Like, he actually pulled that.
I find it ironic that he had to pull it not because she said, what the hell did you just do? But
Hey, speaking of Cliffy, we are most likely going to be at the Raleigh game conference
don't.
in April.
Yes.
I think it's pretty much a given. Did we line up a babysitter?
I talked to Grandma.
Should I go ahead and buy my ticket then?
That's what I was waiting on her to...
Yes, I talked to Grandma and she said yes, she will ask for the days off.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Then
yes, we can
that's
buy
gonna
tickets
happen.
now, and it's going to happen. You may want to contact the guy on the... I think we'll probably just go ahead and get a hotel room,
Okay.
and then that guy that was on the forum that we found it from originally, you know, from the Knox Game Developers
Okay.
forum, like, you may go in a hotel room together with him.
All right. I'll see.
I just
what
don't want you to make you
options
feel
are there.
awkward, and I don't mean that because
No.
Cicely's there. I mean because, dude, I sleep in my boxer briefs, and that's
Oh,
it.
okay. I was gonna say, like, I've done the convention hotel room before. I'm not.
Because if I have to wear pajamas, I will wear pajamas.
Yeah, she's fine with that. I am not. I cannot sleep unless all I'm wearing
I
is
was
boxer
in
briefs.
band.
So I am doing this for your protection.
Okay. In that case.
And the reason that all this is related to Cliffy B is this Raleigh Game Conference that's happening in April. I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
I don't like where this is going. Like, are you wanting to heckle him? Are you wanting to troll him?
Keynoted by Cliffy. Because it's in Epic's backyard.
I'm not sitting beside him.
It's in the triangle.
Not going now. No, I'm just kidding.
I think I may have to bring a shoe to throw. I think...
I am definitely.
Do you think he'll
wrong
have like
culture.
George Bush like reflexes to dodge
You
his
and
shoe?
me can sit off on one side of the
No,
room.
actually, you know what I'm going to? You know
and
what I'm
let
going
him do
for?
it.
I'm going in there for validation or rejection of my assumption.
That he's a douchebag? Like, you have to see him in person?
Like, I mean, if you see him in person and he gets up there on stage, I'll see his mannerisms, I'll see the manner in which he makes these jokes, and that'll tell me, like...
Or if he even makes them in a keynote.
Yeah, or do you even make them? And that'll tell me, like, is this, like, a web persona you play into? Is this, like, a ironic... Like, I'm doing the bro thing ironically? Or is this, like, a genuine... You can put everything on... And I want to say, man, like, I've already ruined Patrick at work, host of the
ECMO
Gamers Casual Sunday podcast. You know, we're checking out, which is on iTunes now, by the way. Casual Sunday Gamers. I've already ruined Patrick because I'm like, you can take anything that Cliffy B says and put comma bro at the end of it. And like you go to his Tumblr and we pull up his Tumblr of his recent posts because I was telling him he makes posts of just check out my hot wife. And there's a bunch of pics of her and like seductive poses, right? Which I told him is like
Creepy
fully
Oh.
it's another like check it out, bro. I'm banging her, bro. Right?
It's just as
But we go-
rude, bro, and wrong as
we go
when
to his
Coco
Tumblr.
gets photographs.
We go to his Tumblr, and I shit you not, like the one that comes up is, I put ketchup on my ketchup.
Bro. I'm
And
just
I'm like,
envisioning
you don't even
Cards
have to,
Against
like,
Humanity. The cards, it's like blank.
suggest.
High five, bro.
Yes, it's a card against humanity, and that's it. You can take that card against humanity, and he didn't put comma bro after it.
Well, I
But
think-
when you just read, I put ketchup on my ketchup. High five, bro. Like that's it. And now I've ruined it, man. Like you cannot, like once you start doing that, you cannot not read
Here's the
that
thing
in
to remember,
everything he
though.
says.
If you're a douchebag to a douchebag, the problem is now you have two douchebags. You are validating it.
You're validating
What's the golden rule?
and making it exponentially worse.
I'm gonna have a dream tonight, and then I will ask our friend. Would he be an authority? But I'll ask Cliffy. Does this dream make me a douchebag, Cliffy?
No, I genuinely think the example in Outtakes, he's not a douchebag because it actually scared the hell out of him. It was like one of these like existential crisis moments. Anyway, that's in the Outtakes.
Final thoughts.
Oh, I was going to get back to something I was saying, but I can't remember what it was before we got off on Cliff.
Final thought, Dylan. I can't remember.
No, there's too much. I could go on about the whole...
If I was to sum this up, I think my final thought is back to reasonable kind of why I highlighted the financial cliff. I think is over dramatic. In that it's a financial cliff. Like we're gonna have another like gaming 1983 crash. I just don't think that's possible to happen again. But I think this is a very real problem that if it's not addressed, there will be major fallout in the AAA gaming space.
Yes.
Because while that happens, there are tons of low-level indie developers, and I mean low-budget indie developers, making great games, your Z-Boy games that people are happy to fucking play. And there's a whole tier now emerging of the $1 to $2 million indie developers that can go on Kickstarter and start to raise like $1 to $2 million. And granted, a lot of these people right now are people with proven track records, but that's kind of the way it should be, right? You shouldn't just give an unknown $2 million.
Right.
But it's like, okay, they've produced a few games, and you can move from one to the other, though. Like, Jonathan Blow could probably go raise a few $1 million after The Witness for his next game, if he so chooses to do that. I don't know that he would.
I was going to say, you have to get past a lot of the people who are like,
yeah,
it's an ideological thing for them.
Well, I think if Peter Molyneux can get his money,
yes.
then Blow could get his money.
Yes.
But, all that aside, that tier can provide gamers with games they enjoy. The risk is more, like this financial bubble and risk. Skullgirl was caught up in it a little bit, but they're a publisher-backed thing. I don't know that they would have done the game the way they did it if they were just self-funded, because the costs involved and everything.
Right.
But the indies who are scrappy, the indies who are innovating, the indies who are saying, I can create this system that will generate my 2D, because they're Zeboyd games, and they're iterating every time, and they're releasing games along the way, and they're doing this smart. And they're working within their means and their budget to produce quality. Like, this is the best quality that we can produce, so we're going to stay within our budget. It's like the whole thing we talk about, like, don't go 3D for your first game. That is not within your budget, right, to do quality 3D. So stick to 2D for your first game. That's within your budget. They're going to be able to do that. So gaming itself is fine. Your AAA Call of Duty level thing is what's actually in jeopardy. That's the one that's actually in jeopardy if there's a bubble.
Yeah.
If there's a bubble in this and it bursts, those are the ones who are going to feel the impact. Because what's going to happen when that thing starts crumbling down and there's just not salaries? They're going to lose a lot of people to indie studios. Like, indie studios are popping up all over the place, where people are like, you know what? Fuck this just getting laid off shit. Like, back to Zeboyd Games, I believe. He's an exile from, Robert Boyd's an exile from the game industry. I believe. Yeah. I'm not fact on that. But I know Radiant Games' Luke is an exile. A lot of the people we've talked at have turned out to be exiles from working in publisher-backed game studios.
And I think if that bubble happens, it will kind of change the face of gaming, just because you'll have a lot of those people who are going to play, Maddens and probably not those, because those will probably survive, but some of the, who only play AAAs will go, oh, gaming sucks now, and, they're not going to buy as much. That could hurt consoles, that could hurt certain things.
But with the PlayStation 4 coming, and we'll see what Microsoft offers, with they're definitely committed to online and digital distribution this next round.
Yes, they could pick up,
which might be the end of the $60 lock-in retail thing, because there's this book out there, I don't know if you've heard of it, called The Long Tail, which tells you that the tail of the $10 to $5 niche indie games add up to more than your AAA Call of Duty game. The revenue Sony will get from the long tail, the revenue the App Store gets, the revenue that Amazon gets,
they just have
not from the winners, the clear, Lady Gaga artists, is dwarfed by the long tail. Like, if you add up the stars, they get dwarfed by the people who are being served by the niche. And if you make a situation like we have with digital distribution, where the cost of having the niche does not increase for Sony, it does increase for Amazon, right? There is a cost with stocking and having that inventory. But when it's all digital and shit, Sony may be just willing to step aside and let the AAA take the hit.
It may be the catalyst that pushes, that was...
Inadvertently. Like, they kind of inadvertently, like, oh, my bad, bro. That's Sony.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of my parting thought. It's like, this is an issue. But I think it's more of an issue at a scale above the indies, and it's an issue for publishers, and it's an issue for studios that only work with publishers.
Well, and I don't really see it as specific to the games industry. I think part of the problem is this is kind of the way a lot of corporate America runs.
But when you look at other more mature
there is
parallels to like the entertainment industry, the movie industry has a union, right?
That is true.
So to stop the whole like put the movie together, pay everybody what you got, and then let them go, and then you make all the profit and the points in the movie, is at minimum in the movie industry you have to pay an actor scale.
Yeah.
Which is the minimum amount that you have to pay an actor to do a movie. And it's kind of set as like the minimum. The same with the NFL. The NFL will have a players union. So in these other entertainment-driven, royalty-driven, I think those are the ones you have to compare. You have to compare the entertainment and royalty-driven industries, like football, like the movie industry. Because when you talk about cost of a game, the other thing you're leaving off the table for Skullgirls, which I hope these developers are getting for their $30,000 salaries that they're taking, is the royalties on the increased sales this DLC character will get.
It's just feeding their publisher, then what have you accomplished? I mean, you've given them some more work, but
so I mean, there's a bit of like, woe is me from them, but it's like, okay, this Kickstarter is not all the money that you're getting. The Indiegogo project is not all the money that you get.
It's just an advance, basically.
It's an advance. It's against prior sales, so it is going to hurt you on the sales because the loyal fan base have already given you their money, but you do expect more money. Now, granted, it's at a little bit more of a risk now, but there is some value between there that we can say, like, no, you need to add in, you didn't get $275,000 for this character, you got $500,000 for this character. There's the sales that came in and the money that cleared as well, that's being, not accounted for on that perspective. So there is a little bit of misleading, or like, this is what games cost. In that argument, especially like, in Cliff Blazinski's argument, like, games cost this much to make, and so we have to fund all this much amount, but it's like, how much did Call of Duty bring in again? Oh yeah, $1 billion? Don't bitch about your 13 million cost, right? If your upshot is in
you're kind of the special case. If you're Call of Duty or
it is.
Gears
Now,
of War.
When you invest $13 million in a game and it makes $3 million,
market
this is why
should
it's
take
not,
care of that.
Yeah, this is why it's not sustainable, and you can't blame the market or the game industry or the consumers blanketly, because you have to take it on a case-by-case, game-by-game basis. You can't look at EA and call Dead Space a flop because gamers were negative to microtransactions. Microtransactions is not why I'm not rushing out to buy this game.
Right.
And then, even Cliff makes the same stupid, I believe it's in that article, he makes the same stupid used game sales hurting the industry, which is like, that's been proven to be the direct opposite, right? In every case, piracy, which is worse than used game sales, has proven an increase in sales in the stuff being pirated, right? Like, it goes the other way because it gets more people involved. And, Gabe Newell said it best. Piracy is a customer service problem. If you have a customer service problem, you have piracy. If you are taking care of your customers and treating them right, you don't have piracy. It's not a problem. So, and I think it's proven that. I mean, Steam basically has one of the weakest DRM systems available, easily circumvented, and they're making money hand over fist for developers. Nobody seems to be complaining about Steam DRM. So, a little off topic there. But we're going to be back next week. Tune in for a little bit of a special episode there with the gameplay on the live stream. GameMarx.com/live is the address if you want to find that. We're also on Twitch TV, twitch.tv/VINULL, because they don't allow me to change my username to represent the show. But maybe they got guys working on that and they'll fix it one day. But thank you to everyone who jumps in the live stream. Thank you for Smilotune for being with us all night. He had great comments throughout this, so he was engaged, and I really feel bad that I kind of didn't I kept meaning to point out yeah, he's made some good points here. Trust he was just genius and said it better than we possibly could have. Thank you for watching the live stream. Thank you for tuning in and watching on YouTube. And thank you for those who download the audio podcast. We will be back in a week.
You've been listening to GameMarx. Visit us at GameMarx.com for the latest news, reviews, and videos on indie gaming. That's GameMarx.com.
I think she's making her dragons fuck or something right now.
Her what?
She's making her dragons fuck. She has like some kind of like dragon breeding game.
Oh. I thought this was...
Not unlike making Pokemon fuck. Like you gotta like give them some stimulants to get them in the mood with one another, and then
I've only played a very little bit of Pokemon.
Oh yeah,
so I don't know what... I didn't know you could breed Pokemon. I just thought you could have.
Oh shit, dude! You have no idea how deep that rabbit hole goes. Of breeding the ultimate like there's comics joking on like 36-year-old men who live at home in their basements who have spent like years breeding the optimal Pokemon to like crush an 8-year-old at a contest, you know.
You know, I saw someone tweeting about, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, they had to ban Yu-Gi-Oh! From their gaming store to,
Because of creepy older guys that live in their basement?
No, because it becomes free daycare and or homeless shelter. So, that's just what that makes me think of.
Oh. FYI, I'm going to keep the, might be a short cast. I'm going for a topic that we might have a lot of discussion on.
Can you talk about it, or is it...
no, I want to save it, because if we actually don't have that much discussion on, I don't want to, like...
Burn it,
yeah.
It really depends.
It does. God, I think I might be coming down with something. I fucking hope not.
That's not what I want to hear. Like, you know, sitting in a small room with you, like, crap.
Oh, Lord gives a general illness. Okay. So that's some weird... So I have some weird European disease. Or Canadian. I forget.
They're all the same. They're not American.
I will just say UK, right? Does that cover all of them?
No, that only covers Europe.
No, what's the term for, like, United Kingdom is all the underneath the crown.
Like, so it would include Canada?
Yeah, like Canada is still part of, like, I think Great Britain. Fuck, man, now I have to go watch that YouTube video again that, like, explains the difference between the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and England. Before we can start the show...
I have
you have a
something
topic.
for outtakes.
You have a topic.
A friend of mine asked me to ask Cicely something.
No, wait. Is this friend of mine a euphemism for you?
No, this is not. This
okay.
is you guys know who this is.
Okay.
I just don't want to reveal his name on the show because. But I thought this was perfect for outtakes. Okay. So he told me about this. I'm gonna laugh. He told me about this dream he had a couple nights ago. And I think it really scared him because he was like, you need to ask Cicely if I'm a racist because of this dream. Because obviously Cicely has the one qualification to tell whether something is racist or not.
She's black and therefore can speak for all black people.
I did suggest
United
he might
Nations
be
of black.
He might be moving from unconscious to conscious racism in this suggestion, but I would go ahead
But Cicely,
and
as the delegate of the blacks...
So,
do the blacks actually have to carry a card? Can you be a card-carrying member of the blacks, or you're just good?
Only if you're...
Nobody ever cards you for blackness, right?
Only if you're light-skinned.
But to be honest, I think this dream does not make him racist. It is merely a little bit of subconscious racism with a lot of his subconscious trolling him. So he's sitting out, in this dream, he's sitting out on the porch. And this black woman comes along walking a pit bull. And, she stops, and I think she says something to him, and she looks up, and she sees the cat in the window. So she makes her way inside, and then looks out the window and goes, "I'm a black lady in your house. I'm a black lady in your house." And he says, "That's fine, just don't steal anything." Is he racist or not, Cicely?
So, we have at least 3 stereotypes in there. I know he's heard me tell him that I wanted a pit bull when I first got a dog.
Well, no, they wouldn't be stereotypes if there wasn't truth behind them. Okay? That's back to the George Carlin, you don't hear about the sex drive of the Eskimos because there has to be truth for there to be a stereotype.
But what I think is funny is, like, the person in his dream is trolling him because she wants him to think he's racist.
I think the thing is that his immediate reaction was,
okay,
don't steal anything. And that, I guess that has to go under that. Okay, so do you think you're in control of you in your dreams? So, like, when your dream has projected your own self, are you actually in control of those things, or is it all just a subconscious show that you were just viewing?
What might be scary is both of the... At least one of those things, if not both of those things in the dream, are subconscious. So, on a subconscious level, is he racist?
Like, if he's ever had a dream where somebody who was not black went into the house and he said, "Don't steal from me," then no, it's not racist.
But...
But...
Otherwise he is.
Now...
At least on a subconscious level.
You and I have... you finished it? Did you finish the mythical... the monomyth book?
No, I never went back.
But you read the openings and all that? So you know all this dream shit is about sex with your parents, right? So that's... See, you can't take the dream on the surface. The dream is about sex with his parents. So I think the first question to ask is, does the black woman or the pit dog represent his mother or his father in this setup?
Or his mother and his father.
It could be. It could be a combined
We don't know
Shiva.
what gender the pit bull is, so it could be...
That's true.
The male and... I went back to Malcolm Gladwell's...
And it's his inability from his relationship with his mother that stems with this deep-seated inability to please a woman. That when the black woman is in the house, see, he really can't do anything, so he's just like, whatever. Because I am unable, because of the relationship my sexual mother and father had, that I'm aware of, to please a woman and satisfy her, that I am therefore gonna let you do whatever you want to do, and please don't hurt me. Because I'm a weak little child, while my parents are banging crazy in the next room. So I don't think he's racist at all. I think he's good.
He may have some other problems.
If he's willing to accept my explanation, he's good.
When you said she had a pit bull, I was wondering if he called it a pit bull, or she called it a pit bull, or B, was it at any point called a Staffordshire Terrier, and C, was it a brindle or a blue or...
I don't know. I don't know that he knows that much about dogs.
Well, on the topic of dreams, are you having a reoccurring nightmare right now, or are you just... Are they
I did not mean to start this.
Well, no, she's had a nightmare, and then, like, a couple nights ago, like, she actually woke up, and I could hear her, like, in the throes of a nightmare, talking, or at least heavy dreaming.
I woke up. No, most recently I remember waking up from a good dream, laughing. I laughed hard enough to wake myself up, but it felt like you thought that I was,
well, that was the night that I was rubbing you on the arm and the shoulder. That was, like, kind of like you don't know what to do with, like, the sleepwalker. who may or may not have a propensity for knives and stabbing in the face. So you're kind of just like doing a slow, like, it's okay. It's okay.
It felt like you thought I was crying, and I was still laughing too hard.
And it's like, am I gonna make it worse? Am I gonna make it stab me in the face? Or by doing nothing do I get stabbed in the face? I don't know. I'm having the nightmare now.
So
that was not a nightmare. Okay. Because the prior night, you said, I think you tweeted or something, you had a nightmare, and you had, like, gone to the living room, and then we're just up at, like, 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah, it was one of those bad ones. You were in it.
Me or Dylan?
You.
Oh, okay. Because Dylan's been in them, right?
Occasionally, but usually as a bystander.
in nightmares, just like,
exactly.
terrible thing is happening, I'm over here.
Where would you ever get that impression? Huh, so that's going on, you know?
Usually it's one of those things where you're like, I am not in this. I don't know how to help this situation at all. Usually my subconscious telling me, figure it out.
I remember I had a dream this week, and I don't dream often. I don't know what that says about me.
Well, it may just be you don't
well-adjusted,
remember it, because that
or
ends up being the way...
yeah, no dreams, whatever, that
stick with you.
Stick with me at all. And I don't know if that just says...
the same way.
I don't know if that means I'm well-adjusted, or I'm fucked up in some other way, like I should be having them.
I think I have enough for both of us.
I know shit. I do remember waking up this week. I can't tell you what the dream is about now. I can't tell you, but it was one of those waking up on the edge of what is reality and what is not, and I'm aware that I've been dreaming, but I don't know how woken up I am. You know, like, are unicorns real or not? I don't fucking know at this moment. I haven't figured out where reality is, right? And so it's one of those kind of waking up. So I don't remember what the dream was. I just remember being in that state of, like, I'm not, like, reality's still kind of, like, tuning on the dial of what's real. And I do remember thinking very clearly, like, because I had lunch the previous day at an Indian restaurant of, like, I gotta pay attention to what I eat at the Indian restaurant. Like, that thought is what is clear of, like, fucking Indian food, man. I gotta be careful. It's fucking Indian chickpeas, man. You don't know what's inside those things.
I think it's the curry. I stay away from the curry.
Well, you know, I don't touch the curry. Like, I have nothing to do with spice at all. So, like, anything that's even hint of that. Oh. Well, alright. So we got all that out of the way. Are we good? I don't know if Cicely did you give a verdict?
I said probably not probably not racist since he's worried about it, but on a subconscious level, possibly slightly racist. But then again, aren't we all?
I was going to say, that was kind of my argument. It's like Malcolm Gladwell's Blink. He gives an example where he does some sort of word association test, and he said that, yeah, you know, white people attribute more... I can't remember how the test actually worked, but have more racist results. But he said even minority people who take it have more racist results because it's kind of like a cultural learned thing, and you just, you know...
Yes.
It's built in the fear of people outside, fear of different people outside the tribe.
Yeah,
you know?
it's exactly. Yeah, I read Blink too. It's a good book. And I kind of remember what you're talking about with that word association test. And I mean, it kind of guides you into feeling even those things, like, even just, like, looking down the examples and all that, I was just like, fucking test is racist for even, like, presuming this assumption, like, you know?
Well, but then they flip.
There's a way that they flip it,
yeah.
But,
anyway.
It was interesting. It was one of those things, like, after I read it, how it actually interpreted the results, it was like, oh, so it's one of those tests that, like, what you think you're doing has no bearing whatsoever on what we're actually measuring.
Right.
You know?
And of course, there's the line between conscious and subconscious, and, you know.
All right.